Hi, this is Cindy
And Michael.
from Part-Time Permies, and we are just now on our way home from the Homesteaders of America Conference 2018.
Darryl Patton, who we were very impressed with last year, didn't know much about him. He's really, really content and rich. Whether you're on a walk with him or just chatting with him.
It's being classed by two pieces of the leaves. Dead giveaway. Only Aster does that. One of the best bronchitis medicines out there. It's also a psychotropic herb. Totally changes the mood, elevates it, makes you feel better, like type thing. Only Aster.
That doesn't grow by us.
No, but you can grow it. Aster anglia novus or something like that, and they'll grow just fine if you plant them.
Okay.
And it's well worth growing if you don't have it.
Is it perennial?
Yes.
And then so this one pretty much
Won't do the same thing as that.
No.
Think of this if you need a general astringent, a poison ivy wash, or a mild headache reliever.
okay, because I have lots of this.
Oh, it's everywhere. And there's like 15 different species, and they'll all look real similar.
Okay.
This one, you can never mistake
No,
it.
they sell that at the store.
And there's a lot of blue asters out there that look the same, but they won't have that leaf clasping the stem. None of it. This is the only species that does. That's the dead giveaway. That is scarlet, aka smooth sumac. But it doesn't matter. They all work the same, except for poison sumac. But you won't have anywhere north of Montgomery.
That has white berries, right?
Grayish white that hang off underneath the branches down. All of the sumacs where the berries are at the terminal end of the branch, perfectly safe.
And so what's your favorite thing to do with sumac? I just tried a whole bunch of it.
Sumacade.
I use it in some of my flu formulas because it's a good respiratory antiviral. Great astringent, especially if you, as I said, boil the hound out of it, just because the more you boil it, the more the tannins set for mouth ulcers, canker sores. One of my favorite kidney medicines. Let's go walk. This is dandelion. What do you know about it?
It's like my favorite thing. You can do everything. You can eat the whole plant.
Eat the whole plant. The leaves are a great bitter green. If you know somebody that's Italian in New York City, they still go out and harvest it all the time.
Along the roadside,
and if you go around, like if you go where you pull in here, there's some really big ones, and some of them are so big that people think they're wild lettuce.
Right.
And you can actually get cultivars that are huge, and they're grown for the leaves. But the root, if you have somebody that's a heart patient and they're taking potassium supplements and they need a diuretic, you give them something like Queen Anne's lace. There's the old saying of Queen Anne's lace is that it makes you piss like a Russian racehorse. Which I was like, what does that mean? And finally realized the Russians were notorious cheaters at horse racing with the drugs. Then they'd give them Lasix, flush it all out. And Queen Anne's lace would do the same. It's as good as Lasix for pulling out fluid. But if you pull out lots of fluid, you're also pulling out medication. So you've either got to be very careful at replacing it, or in the case of potassium, you go to dandelion because it's a great diuretic, but it's what's called a potassium-sparing diuretic. And it doesn't spare the potassium, but it's high in potassium. So as it flushes potassium out, it's replacing it. So, if you look at potassium role in the functioning of the heart, it slows things down, works on what's called the repolarization phase. If you got too much, it'll slow down too much. And if you don't have enough, then the sodium side takes over the depolarization, and then it'll speed it up. So you got to have it in that balance. The root of this is really good for heartburn. Just make a tea or a tincture or chew on the root. I wouldn't chew it because to me it's too bitter. But if you like bitter coffee, like chicory coffee, use this like chicory. And they're actually related. Really good liver herb too. Very good as a bitter tonic to stimulate digestion, break down food, but also to help heal the liver and regenerate the liver. Because what does the liver do?
Detoxify.
But that doesn't mean it can't get sick, obviously. So when it gets overloaded, years of abuse and sick, it needs to be regenerated, and this is one of the ones that works.
It's a very good early bee food.
Huh?
Also very good early bee food.
Yes, it is. If you find like where I live, lots of it in North Alabama, and it's an early, and produces a lot of pollen, which is really good. My bees just pull it in. This is beautiful. I use it in formulas for fatty liver, not by itself, but I use it in some formulas.
Okay.
And then always, if anybody's got a fatty liver, something you can actually grow, grows just fine, but you don't normally find it wild here, is milk thistle. And it's really good for fatty liver.
I just let mine go. I have like a whole patch.
See?
I mean, huge patch of it now.
And it doesn't mean it just because something doesn't grow in an area doesn't mean it won't grow.
Right.
I've got a friend down almost to Montgomery, and he's got gorgeous patches
Yes.
of it.
Yeah. I
It's
did.
like getting
Everyone's
thistle.
like, get these weeds out of here, and I'm like, no, I want them. Leave them.
Right. And I'm sure you noticed that what they call milk thistle is it's not milky sap or anything. It looks like somebody spilt milk on the leaves. Broadleaf, what is it?
Yep, there.
Broadleaf plantain.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
Native or non-native? You ever heard the story of that it's white men's footsteps?
Yeah,
you said it was
Non-native. This is actually non-native. The Rugelii that looks like broadleaf on steroids, it'll get the leaves will get this big, is native
Here.
to the oh yeah. There's like 7 or 8 species native to this country.
Right.
But the English did bring this over, and the lance leaf you'll see out here, the long leaf, were brought over as food and as medicine. But we had native plantain already. And you can tell the difference because this one, if you look at the base of the stem where it comes out of the ground, is green. The Rugelii native one has a streak of burgundy
Going
at the
through
base
it.
of it. And that tells you right away that's the native plantain. And you can take the leaves on, even on this one, but on the Rugelii, especially when they get big, boil them about 7, 8, 9 minutes. They'll turn thin, translucent. You can make sushi wrappers with them. Really, really good little sushi wrappers. When these get bigger and they get real fibrous, and the ribwort name comes into effect. You don't want to be spitting fiber out when you eat them because it's like eating spinach, a very nutritious plant. Dry them, powder it up. Now you've got vegetable bouillon that just immediately dissolves in your soups and stews and gives you all the soluble and insoluble fiber. And all the plantains work exactly the same.
Yeah,
There's no
that's
difference.
what they said.
And it's actually an exception to the rule. If you look at, say, lobelia, for example, if you pick lobelia on a dry ridge where it's only about that tall, it's going to be stronger than the lobelia that's on a creek bank that's this tall because it's had to fight to survive, and it produces a lot more protective medicinal chemicals. The plantain, I've never seen any difference in where it's located as far as strength goes. This is a good example. Did you hear me tell my story about the spider bite?
Yes.
Okay, well, you pretend you didn't. Y'all didn't hear my spider bite story. Okay.
No, we didn't.
Good.
Tell us, please. We want to hear.
Anyway, if you get bitten by a brown recluse spider, take a potato, boil it. You want it hot and soft because it's that heat when you cut the piece off and put it flesh down that softens the skin, brings blood to the surface, and sucks the poison out. Because if you look at like a brown recluse spider, a wolf spider will do this in some people, and they're coming in like crazy for the winter. And then I was sleeping the other night, and one crawled across my face, and it's like dead sleep. I knew. Or one of our cats, you see, she's going. Okay, you got a spider, don't you? Good, smash it, because they get about that big.
Yeah,
they'll
do.
bite the stew out of you too. And some people they'll have the exact same reactions to a brown recluse. It'll necrotize the tissue, but people get bit, and it's antibiotics, hyperbaric chambers, debridement. Otherwise, it's the ice cream scoop.
Yep.
Excise every bit out, just like a rattlesnake bite in miniature. And so the potato softens the skin and draws that poison, that venom, out. Then you I told her, this lady that called me, put plantain on it. Boil it. Put it in a Vitamix. You just want it to come out, look like a big old blob of hot, wet spinach out of canned spinach. Put that on, let it cool, put it on again, let it cool. Third time, bind it on. And the next day she called, she said when she pulled the potato off, you could see the brown venom that it drew out. By the next morning, the pink skin was growing back in. Because potato drew the venom out, does not neutralize anything. And you could probably in a pinch do a sweet potato. It's hot and soft. Anything like that will work, or mullein with help, but a potato just works good. And then the plantain contains allantoin, as in comfort, same as in comfort. So that helps to heal the skin, but plantain has unnamed chemicals in it, unknown chemicals that neutralize poisons. So what's left, it probably breaks the enzyme down that breaks your enzymes down. And so by the next morning, she said she could already see new flesh starting to grow. It's that effective. That's why it's in bath salve, because it helps to heal wounds and make them grow back. And in fact, you'll hear about comfrey and plantain both that you can't use them on a deep wound because it'll make them heal so fast that you might seal in trash and then have anaerobic bacteria, but you can. But you in a grid down situation, you treat it from the base up and you heal it from the base up so that you flush it out real good and then slowly close it up so you don't close any trash in there. But really good for, I mean, like gaping wounds is plantain. That's why if you look at it, and I saw them yesterday, the only two things higher in a lanolin than plantain is what? Remember? Anybody? Well, good. You don't remember? Breast milk.
Oh, that's right.
That's why it's good for women to breastfeed their babies because it's so good for the immune system and keeping the intestines healed from any inflammatory response to milk. And what else? Maggot.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Maggot poop. Because
We were sitting right there.
I know. It's up front row.
it's not good for memory though. Because
Yeah, you
maggot
gotta talk about
therapy, which from up till 1940-ish was part of mainstream medicine. Then the synthetics came in and they dumped it because they could patent the synthetics. Now it's back in vogue,
Maggots are just
at least for the eating part, because maggots only eat dead, dying, gangrenous flesh. They don't eat the healthy flesh. And then their feces is so high in lanolin that it causes the cellular structure to just grow right back. It's the best stuff in the world for poison ivy to neutralize the Escherichia. Everybody talks.
Are you talking about the plantain? Or
Plantain. Back to plantain. Everybody talks about jewelweed.
Yes.
That's only because go back to the 80s and Tom Brown and that group, they were talking about jewelweed because that's what they had. No, jewelweed does not hold a candle to plantain for healing poison ivy, poison oak, or poison sumac. Huh?
So, how would you
Okay.
apply
Let's say
that
you're
to-
out in the woods. You get into some poison ivy. Most people will never notice this because we're too busy. But poison ivy actually sort of burns and stings a little bit when you get it on you. It's just real, like, you know, almost how, like if you touch your tongue to a 9-volt battery, it's got that buzz to it. If you pay attention, you say, oh, sort of something tingling, feeling weird. If you take plantain leaves, crush them up, rub them on right then, it'll neutralize the urushiol so you don't come down with poison ivy. I thought you were just getting a close-up.
Try not to get run over.
But if you already have a case of poison ivy, you take it, do the Vitamix, the pot method, and get really good hot and pulp it up to release all the chemicals. Poultice it on. You can get spit poultice, which, you know, I'm a little iffy on spit poultices. I always have been, because some people's mouths are pretty nasty. You know. Anyway, great as a salve. You make plantain salve, plantain oil. It works real well. One of the benefits of doing it, just pulping it up with hot water, is that it will neutralize the urushiol, but the hot water will cause all of the histamines in that area to be released at one time, and that's what causes the itching. And so for about 6 to 8 hours, you won't itch, because it takes 6 to 8 hours for the histamine level in that area to come back up high enough
you don't start
to
itching
itch
right
again.
away, and the next day you're like, where did I get this?
Oh, and that's what happens when those people, we don't pay attention, you get into it, and then 2 days later, golly, eating up. Now, about 4 times a year, I'll have somebody come to me with poison ivy, but I wasn't in poison ivy. And I'll take one look and I say, I bet you were in your yard working. Yeah? And I bet you've got English ivy in your yard. Yes, we were pulling English ivy, or weed whacking English ivy, and that's what got them. About 30 or 40% of the population, and I'm one of them, that I would rather, when I was allergic to poison ivy, rolled in it than rolled in English ivy. Because English ivy is like somebody spilled acid on you. I discovered this before I was into herbs. I had bought a piece of property and had a hillside of English ivy. I'll get rid of that stuff. And I had it so bad that all I could do is I went down to Panama City and laid in the ocean for 3 days. And everybody buys it at the garden shop.
Yeah.
Once.
That's what I was like,
You buy it once.
It kills everything.
I can pick a
They
leaf
bring it around
by the
tree
stem,
and
Yeah.
poison the
drop it,
root.
and And you'll get
Yeah,
it.
it's roughly
I did that
die
one
off.
time, and in 15 minutes I'll have a burn pop up.
Wow.
And so, and they say, well, that's what we do. We were killing the English ivy, and that's what got them. But you never hear that being talked about.
Will this help that also?
Yes. And so
Is
you
it
can
the
use
same?
that on there.
Is it the same stuff people are allergic to in English ivy, or no?
there's
It's
a-
different.
I can't think of the chemical name, but there's another chemical in it that does that.
Okay.
Which is funny because both English ivy and poison ivy are used. You can make a tincture with them to treat other outbreaks. Plantain is great stuff. Very good for bladder infections, cystitis as well. Not by it. I don't use it normally by itself, but as a part of a formula. And even though it doesn't seem that way, it's very demulcent to that inflamed tissue in the urinary tract system.
You could use that as a tea.
As a tea, you can also use it as a tincture for certain cases. And a lot of times, you can actually take a tincture and make a tea with it. Because if you're working with something like bladders, kidneys, anything that's a hollow organ, a tincture is not as effective because it can't reach all those areas. So you take the tincture, figure out what your dose is, put that in water, non-acidic juice, and you're not diluting it. People think, well, you're diluting. No, you're not, because you're drinking the same amount you would. You're just adding it to a carrier to get it to all those areas because you want to flush large amounts of fluid through those hollow organs to reach. Like I was talking about the deep recesses for UTIs. A tincture's not going to cut it. It'll help, but it's like the regular medicine. It can't get everywhere. Whereas you flush a few cups of that, not diluted, I'm doing the same thing, of that tincture in a carrier, now it reaches all those hollow organs. This one is red clover. It's got the round ball of red flowers. Then you got crimson clover, which has the tallest spike of crimson red clover. Then you go down to Dutch white and alsike, which is a hybrid of the two. Very good for nerve damage, good cough medicine, mild nervine, and you can eat the leaves, eat the flowers. You make a flour out of the flowers. You can eat the young greens, they're very nutritious. But what do they do to cattle in the spring? Bloat them, and they will bloat you and give you terrible gas if you're not careful. If you use it too long, too much, it can also cause neurological symptoms. So it's small amounts, and it's one of the original things you'll see in things like SCAT for cancer as a blood purifier. I'm not personally totally sold on it for that purpose, though.
So what kind is this?
That looks like Dutch. That looks like Dutch white clover.
Pretty much goes through all.
And I have the little tiny,
Little white flower.
round flowers. Here's your lance leaf or English plantain.
Yeah.
Then your broadleaf plantain.
Right.
And these can both get massive in a wet ditch. They get a lot bigger in wet ditches. But if you notice, the base of the stem is green. That means it's the non-native. That's Plantago major. Some people will say major. It's Plantago major from England, Plantago lanceolata from England. Then if this one had more, it's really sort of a wavier looking leaf, big, and at the base of that, each one of those stems that was burgundy red, that is the native one. Doesn't matter, they look the same.
Like here? Oh no, that's native.
I have not seen any of the native one here. Where I live in Alabama, it's very common. And if you know somebody that admits it, they've used the seeds on these for
Bread?
Metamucil.
Yeah.
That's where Metamucil comes from, Plantago ovata.
Yep.
Is that sweet Annie?
Ground ivy. Oh, we'll talk about it in a minute. Ground ivy. And this food, this is thrown, some of the people I've talked to, it's thrown off. They thought it was garlic mustard, which it's not. They thought it was violets, which it's not. And they said, well, my ground ivy doesn't get that big. Well, that's just because your ground ivy doesn't get that big. In Alabama, where I am, it doesn't get that big. It gets about that big. Still ground ivy. If you feel the stem,
Oh, that's a big one.
Oh, that is.
Man, yeah, mine's little.
this will tell you, yes, I am ground ivy, because feel the stem and you're going to say, it's square.
Oh, it's in the mint family.
And it puts it either in the mint family or what family? The other family that has square stems. Verbena, the vervain family. There are a few exceptions to the rule, but there are exceptions like cleavers, goosegrass has a square stem. It is not a mint, not a verbena. That's Gallium. But in traditional Southern folk medicine, a square stem plant, mint or verbena, was considered a nervine, a calming agent, a relaxant, which is what they are. They also work on pain. Some of the mints are also stimulants. You think, well, how can it be a nervine and a stimulant? It's not like Kramer stimulant. It's a stimulant to circulation in the bodies, the flow of lymph, the flow of blood, that kind of stimulant, not a type of thing. Unless you're one of the 1 in 1,000 people that like if they take valerian instead of calming it, it agitates you. You know, there's always somebody that flips it around, but that's the exception. This is one that in early 1800s on back, 2 groups of people used it all the time. First group were people who made hats, like those big top hats. They were made with felt. How do you make felt? You use a lot of really nasty things like mercury and aluminum and whatever, heavy metals. This chelates heavy metals. The only other plant that does that commonly known is cilantro.
It's cilantro, yeah.
Which you can't use the cilantro because it tastes nasty.
Not everybody does. Certain genes, some people love it, and other people
It is genetic.
And I'm the third one. Is I used to take groups down the Amazon on survival expeditions and to go live with the Indians and hunt with blowguns. And they just, when they make something, they don't put cilantro in it. They put like wads of cilantro.
See, I love it. I love it.
And I reached a point where I just couldn't face it no more.
It tastes like soap to you, doesn't it?
Does.
Yeah.
I don't know about soap, it just tastes nasty.
That's the genetic part.
Yeah, 20%.
I could see
Yeah.
where someone would think that, but I
Now-
actually
now-
like it a little bit.
I can use it now in salsa if it's just a little bit, but just, I mean, they would like
Chinese
put
food.
wads of it in there.
Yum.
And you know what the seeds are called?
Coriander.
You said that yesterday, didn't you? Somebody did, and I said, how did I know that?
On Europe, they just
Coriander.
call
And I don't
both
like
of them
coriander.
Coriander, right.
Yeah, and I don't like coriander either. I can't stand it.
I
Like
love
people put it in sauerkraut and stuff.
Yeah.
Put it in beer. Ooh, it's a-
So this is a heavy
Now I
metal.
use it. I use it in absinthe. That's one of the ingredients in absinthe.
So that's a heavy
That's
metal.
a heavy metal chelator. And what you do,
What's the name of it again?
ground ivy. Also, and you gotta be careful because henbit gets called ground ivy and dead nettles get called ground ivy. It's also called alehoof. Also called creeping Charlie. The English call it creeping
Yeah,
Charlie.
Yeah.
Charlie.
And then I believe the botanical name is what Glachoma heteroaceae, if I'm not mistaken.
So what would
It has little blue flowers on it.
It looks like
Yeah.
this little seed pod or something, like a ball on it, doesn't it? It's a good binding.
I've never really paid attention. I've always paid attention to the flowers.
Because it's grow. It's just
Oh, it's
decided-
invasive.
Yeah, it's
to
all over
some
my
areas.
bottom of my cabin now.
It's also called alehoof because they flavored ale with it.
Okay.
It's one of the
My
flavorings.
chickens like it.
And very nutritious green to eat. And good nervine, but if you want to make it as a chelator, you make hot tea, drink it hot,
Okay.
which means it's a diaphoretic,
Okay.
like most mints are. But what it does is it's like it clumps those heavy metals, and then you pull them out of your pores. And in fact, it's interesting. Then you go do along with it a steam bath or a sauna. A sweat lodge, a real old-fashioned sweat lodge works even better. It seems like it makes your pores open up better, and that excretes them out of your skin. I taught special ed for 30 years, and among the autistic kids, among the people that had money, they would buy dry saunas because there's a belief that they were collecting heavy metals in the body in autistic kids, and they used the dry saunas to pull the heavy metals out.
So drink the tea and then sweat.
Hot tea,
Yes.
which
Is
is
it just
already
like
a diaphoretic, and then you get a sweat. Somebody thought this was Sweet Annie.
Sweet Annie.
Well, if you crush it and smell it, you'll know it's not. Does anybody recognize it that wasn't on the walk yesterday? So there. Crush those leaves and smell them, and then take a bite out of it. And it's actually very tasty. In Hispanic cooking, it's used as a spice on occasion.
That's what we call it. That's what we call
I
it.
always
here,
call it Sweet Annie.
Well, it's not Sweet Annie.
Okay.
It
What is
is called dog fennel, summer cedar, cedar weed.
It's okay to bite that?
Oh yeah,
smells
it's
wonderful.
very tasty.
Well, I always
smell
made
this
wreaths
before.
out of it. And not.
And these have gone to seed, so in some areas,
Yes,
you know, it looks like
smell it.
what it
It's
looks
got
like
a
is like a big stalk of cedar branch coming up out of the ground, sort of real,
So this
real
is not
frilly.
Sweet Annie.
No, it is not. Sweet Annie has a different odor, by the way, when you smell it. What it is it's a member of what's called the Eupatorium family, the boneset family.
Yeah.
Very
But,
herbaceous.
but unlike, boneset is really bitter. This is it's called summer cedar, dog fennel, cedar weed. It grows out in pastures all the time. You see it very commonly. And all the Eupatoriums are antiviral for respiratory viruses.
This is good against respiratory virus.
Yes, for the flu in particular.
If you just chewed it like that?
No, you make a tea out of it. If you just chew it, it's a spice. It's used in Mexican cooking as a spice on occasion.
Yeah, that's good.
Unlike the boneset, the thoroughwort that's bitter as all get out. This is actually one of the bonesets that tastes good.
It does. It tastes very good.
Now you
A
don't.
little bit of bitter back.
Yeah, there's a big fear in modern herbalism right now of a chemical called pyrrolizidine alkaloids. Not good for the liver, long-term use. So everybody's afraid of boneset and comfrey and this and that. And this. Theoretically, if you ate this every day, it could cause venous occlusion in the liver. If I had somebody I was working with that had a compromised liver or liver disease, then I would steer clear of it. But they're already having an issue.
But
Because it's used in my Lyme disease protocols as one of the ingredients for Lyme disease and Rocky Mountain spotted fever.
Okay.
Use the roots on it.
Oh, the roots?
Use the roots.
Which
My
plant?
girlfriend has
Which
Rocky
plant was that?
Mountain fever.
Teasel.
It's Teasel.
You see it?
I had the wrong
It's on
name.
there. It looks like, see the big brown burr on top?
And
When we go by my truck, I'll get
Okay.
one.
Plenty of that.
You have to respect this plant. When I dig it,
Yeah, you wear a little gloves.
I've got gloves, and then I take it and I chop it down and then dig the roots, because even the roots have thorns on them. But it's actually pretty. It'll have little lavender blooms on it that sort of grow in groups and full of seeds. That's why it's so invasive, and it's vicious.
Are those the seeds that get in the hair on your arms and you can't get it out? Or
No,
Those are burrs.
no, that's the bigger lies.
Actually,
Yeah, that
in
can
Harper's
have
Ferry,
those.
they talk about they
It's
imported
knapweed.
they imported this thinking they could use it somehow in wool processing.
What they,
Why they
and
thought
they
that,
did
but-
use it in the 1800s for this.
Yeah.
That's why it was called knapweed. You used it to raise a nap on wool.
Yeah.
And then they figured there's an easier way to do it mechanically, and they quit. But it was too late. In fact, you'll see this in some of the Scottish clans as being the flower on their coat of arms.
Oh yeah,
But it's a vicious plant. But it's called knapweed or teasel, and the root on this, you got to be careful. Some people have really strong reactions to it and get sick using it for Lyme disease. So it's not one used by itself. It's not really toxic, but it's almost like it causes a really strong Herxheimer's reaction. And but it's part of the formulas I use. And then you start looking at Lyme disease, in particular Rocky Mountain spotted fever, which is actually easier to deal with. Everybody sees Lyme disease and they treat Lyme disease, but there's co-infections that you treat that take years and years and years to deal with. You've heard, I'm sure, the story of I mentioned yesterday of Chris Christopherson. He was being put into stage 4 hospice care for Alzheimer's, like Glenn Campbell died in, and then his wife finally kept researching and said, maybe he's got Lyme disease. He had a titer test, had Lyme disease. He's touring in Europe, where he was last year, back to normal, or as normal as you'll ever get with Lyme disease, even herbally speaking. Because what happens is Lyme disease only occurs in Lyme, Connecticut. And that's what the doctors in the Deep South especially, they don't ever see it, so they don't know how to recognize it. And because they don't ever see it and recognize it, they don't realize that all these things that they're diagnosing as chronic fatigue, Epstein-Barr, a lot of those are actually Lyme disease. And now a lot of cases of Alzheimer and dementia are Lyme disease. And it's a lot more cases like where I live in Alabama than people even realize. But they got in their mind that it doesn't occur. Or you hear Rocky Mountain spotted fever, and immediately they go to the Rocky Mountains. No, it was maybe, I really don't know. I'm assuming it was discovered out there where it got the name. But if you look at it, I think it's eastern Missouri or Oklahoma, and you see satellite photos of a volcano, and it's got the smoke just goes off like a plume. That plume goes from eastern Missouri, Oklahoma, through southern Virginia, down into North Carolina, North Alabama, North Georgia, to the coast. That's the epicenter of Rocky Mountain spotted fever. You look at the South, we've got over 6,000 species of flowering plants. I know 4,000 or 5,000 plants that I make medicine from. That's from here to Peru. So that's why I love it, because I'm always learning, new things to learn. But I could sit and talk an hour in one little area if you want to. It's just, there's so much to try to hit and go over. That's what I like about it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Awesome. Thank you so much.